Tonight on Bridge City News, Fort Macleod RCMP recovers stolen vehicle with a child inside. We have the details. More steps are being taken to address the drug crisis in our city, and Lethbridge City Council wants to hear from you. And we'll take you on a tour of an area in North Carolina which has been wiped out by flooding caused by Hurricane Florence. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. First, it was North Battleford, Saskatchewan, and last night it happened in Fort Macleod, Alberta. A vehicle was stolen with a child inside of it. RCMP say around 10:30 last night, a 2009 Chevy Tahoe was taken from the area of 10th Street and 6th Avenue in Fort Macleod. A 6-year-old male child was inside at the time. Fortunately, around 1 o'clock this morning, the vehicle was found by police and the child was also found safe and unharmed. RCMP remind us that it only takes but a moment for your vehicle to be stolen.
Let's not make it easy for those who want to do criminal activities easy. We have locks in our vehicles for a reason. Let's utilize them. Our convenience, in a couple cases, turn out to be terrible instances, and let's learn by those mistakes and let's make sure it doesn't happen again.
Lethbridge City Council has announced the next step in finding solutions to the opioid crisis in our city. During a break at yesterday's council meeting, Mayor Chris Spearman, joined by councillors Rob Miyashiro and Blaine Hagan, spoke about finding some answers to the drug problem in our city. Spearman says there will be 4 upcoming sessions where council members will hear from community stakeholders about possible solutions.
On October the 10th and 11th, we'll be hosting 4 facilitated sessions where anyone in our community can come and share how the drug crisis is affecting them. We also want people to bring ideas and be prepared to collaborate on constructive solutions with other community members from all sides of this issue.
The meetings will take place at the Lethbridge Lodge from 1 till 3:30 and 5:30 till 8 p.m. on both days. Backyard chickens could soon become a reality in Lethbridge. By a 6-3 vote, City Council approved a process to investigate the feasibility of a pilot project allowing urban residents to keep up to 4 hens. Local resident Kelty Baird made the request to Council, asking our city to join Edmonton and Red Deer in allowing backyard chickens.
Having the benefit of a successful program in other cities in Alberta is certainly a win for us. It just goes to show that urban centres similar size and demographic to Lethbridge can do this program successfully, so Lethbridge should be able to do as well. I think reconnecting with our food sources is a big part of understanding where food comes from and appreciating how food is grown. I think citizens in urban environments tend to forget that connection with the land. So I think that this will be beneficial, especially for future generations, to learn about food resources.
Blaine Hagan and Ryan Parker voted against the resolution. A report with the results of the study will be coming back to Council on November the 13th. Watermark Park is now officially open on the west side. The park is located right behind Senator Joyce Fairburn Middle School, which opened last week. Watermark Park includes a playground, basketball courts, skateboard plaza, and 2 soccer fields. Mayor Chris Spearman and Councillors Parker and Croson were on hand for the announcement and the ribbon cutting. Land Development Manager Abby Slovak says that the park will draw many kids. It's a special place for everyone.
When we designed this park, we looked at making a space for all ages and all abilities. We wanted this skateboard plaza to be for someone who's never tried skateboarding at all, to be able to come and it's not too intimidating, it's not huge. The fitness equipment, anybody in the community can come and access this equipment and have a free workout. So we really wanted this space to be very inclusive.
The new park is the first phase of development in the new Watermark community. Residential lots are expected to become available in 2020. Calgary is showcasing an electric autonomous shuttle and will do so until the end of the month. The shuttle takes passengers between the Calgary Zoo and the Telus Park Science Centre. It will also have a route in Edmonton next month. Last week, a number of shareholders had the chance for an in-depth look at the shuttle, one of whom was City of Lethbridge Transit Manager Kevin Ponick.
It was more to just investigate the technology that's coming up It is growing very, very quickly. So we just want to make sure we're on top of it and kind of know what's coming around the bend for transit in the future. It would be kind of cool if we could do something from maybe the Galt Museum to the River Valley. So we did ask about, how much of a hill grade it could handle and everything, and by the sounds of what we were talking about to the people that developed it, it wouldn't have too many problems with the hill.
The cost of bringing the shuttle to the city for a month-long pilot project would be around $30,000. Pontic says bringing the shuttle to Lethbridge would require a grant and council approval. Alberta Health Services is looking for public input regarding the direction of healthcare in southern Alberta. The Oldman River Health Advisory Council, along with members of the AHS South Zone Advisory, met to discuss the future of healthcare. A presentation was made regarding community paramedic services. AHS says it is important to hear the voices of the residents who are affected directly by healthcare provided.
The health advisory councils are intended to listen to Alberta Health Services and understand what it is that they're proposing to do in their operations, and then present that to community members across the regions and listen to community members and feedback that to Alberta Health Services.
These collaborations occur about 4 times a year. You can find out more information on dates and locations for future meetings on the AHS website. Alberta Health Services has issued a boil water advisory for Lethbridge North County. The advisory is for 180 users in the area. A potable water line was damaged, creating the need for the advisory. All residents are advised to bring water to a boil for at least a minute before consuming. That includes drinking, brushing teeth, making ice, cleaning foods, and preparing infant formula. The advisory remains in effect until further notice. If you'd like more information, call HealthLink toll-free at 811. The federal government may turn to a former judge to help determine how to address a recent court ruling that quashed approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. Ottawa may reach out to a retired Supreme Court justice who would provide advice on what would constitute meaningful consultations with Indigenous groups to satisfy the conditions of the Federal Court of Appeal. The Liberals are still considering whether to appeal the ruling. They plan to announce their steps at the end of the month. They want to have the pipeline's fate decided before Alberta's provincial election next May and the federal election next fall. Now here's something you don't see every day. BC Wildfire Service Information Officer Kevin Skrepnik says a fire whirl was caught on camera by a firefighter battling the blazes. It was uncommonly large and lengthy in duration.
Basically, a fire whirl is a phenomenon where you've got very high winds that's around a fire. When that combines with kind of the rising heat off of a fire, that can create a bit of an eddy, and it's going to pick up some of the combustible gases, some of the smoke, sometimes the debris in the area as well. It's not uncommon where we do have fires that'll burn over equipment, like whether it's hoses or pumps or things like that. So sometimes it'll look more along the lines of like a dust devil, and in some cases it'll actually have some fire in it with the combustible gas. So that's an example of what we're seeing here, and a fairly dramatic example of it as well. Typically a fire whirl won't be as large and won't last as long as what you're seeing in that clip.
Hurricane Florence has claimed dozens of lives and wiped out an untold number of homes. Officials warn that by the time Cape Fear River crests later today, it will threaten even more residents.
Well, I'm just out here taking some pictures because this is history here. We've never seen it like this before. Never seen nothing like this before. But, I mean, everything's flooded around Fayetteville, but I stayed close to the hospital up there, and I'm on a high hill. But it's bad. People's never seen it like this.
I've been through quite a few. This is probably the worst rain event that I've seen. As far as wind damage wise, not even close. But yeah, it's pretty bad, and it's pretty terrifying for quite a few people around here.
Well, I mean, I think we were fortunate enough that the wind kind of subsided and it got to like a Category 1. But we experienced quite a bit of damage. Some historic flooding, as you can see, obviously, and a lot of folks still without power, including myself. Haven't had power since Friday. Just out here trying to take it all in, get out of the house being at 80-some degrees, and there's no telling. I mean, they've gotten people mandatory evacuated. They asked within a mile of this river, and we'll just kind of see what happens. I don't really know. As good as can be expected. Of course, I lost all my food. I had to, so I'm out of everything that I had in the freezer and the refrigerator. That's that's gone. Have a tree down in the yard. Some of my shed is kind of damaged from the tree coming down, but thankfully it didn't hit the house, so I guess we can be fortunate as far as that goes.
A pair of Trenton, North Carolina residents took a reporter out on a boat after their hometown was inundated by floodwaters caused by Hurricane Florence.
This town, which is quite a bit inland, has been inundated by the Trenton River. You can see here we're in the downtown area, and these businesses all flooded out. You have antique stores, auto shops, homes, all sorts of people's livelihoods now ruined by the devastation that was this hurricane. John here, we were just in his house, and I'll tell you, he's lost a lot.
Yeah, that's my house right there. Wow. And if I can help it, I'll get it back to the way it was, if I can. If you walk over here, you can see inside a little sewing room that my wife's got.
Oh, it's all wet.
Yeah, you can see where the water's come up.
Authorities say a U.S. Border Patrol supervisor charged in the killings of 4 women knew the victims and targeted them. Officials say Juan David Ortiz planned to die in a confrontation with Texas police.
But what we have right now, and what we do know, is that Ortiz carried out these murders in a cold and callous way.
We had an idea that he might have gone home. We weren't too certain where he had gone, but when he was at home, he was already ready to make sure that we were going to show up and arrest him. Well, at that time, of course, he had numerous weapons. He was loading up all these weapons, thinking that DPS was going to confront him, and he was looking at a confrontation. Thank God that didn't happen. Right there at that point, when he comes out, you know, the officers, both troopers confronted him. One of them attempted to tase him, and he ran. And what he was going to do, he was trying to commit suicide by cop. He was going to try to use his phone to make it look like it was a weapon. It didn't happen.
A homeless man attacked and killed a top amateur golfer from Spain who was playing around alone near her university campus in Iowa. Police say he left her body in a pond on the golf course.
First, our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and friends of Celia Barquin Arizamena. These are difficult times for them, and we ask that you're respectful of their loss as they process what's happened. The Ames Police Department received a call at approximately 10:24 a.m. from Coldwater Golf Course located at 1400 South Grand Avenue yesterday morning. The report was that golfers had located a golf bag with no golfer around it in the fairway on number 9. Officers responded to the golf course and began to search for the missing golfer. At approximately 11:03 a.m., Coldwater staff alerted officers to a body found in the water next to the number 9 tee box. Officers did locate a body in the water, and she was subsequently identified as Celia.
Japanese billionaire Yusaku Mizawa plans to blast off on the first ever private commercial trip around the moon and will invite artists on the journey.
Many of you may be wondering, why do I want to go to the moon? What do I want to do there? And most of all, why did I purchase the entire BFR? Entire BFR, very huge. For me, this project is very meaningful. I thought long and hard about how valuable it would be become the first private passenger to go to the moon. At the same time, I thought about how I can give back to the world and how this can contribute to world peace. This is my lifelong dream. I don't like being alone, so I want to share these experiences and things with as many people as possible.
Hope is fading for the dozens of people feared buried in a mudslide set off by a typhoon in the Philippines. There are 70 confirmed dead from the storm that has hit both the Philippines and China very hard.
Those missing now, when we approached them, they decided to stay because they said that for how many years, it's been a long time, how many typhoons came, we were not affected. So we could not force them to move out of their places.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in arrived in North Korea today for his third and possibly most challenging summit yet with leader Kim Jong-un. Moon hopes to break an impasse in talks with the U.S. over the North's denuclearization. The country of Venezuela is in an economic crisis. Thousands of people are fleeing the country trying to find food and work. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says the biggest reason why the South American nation is falling apart is simple. Socialism does not work.
To see the unraveling of a nation, to see how socialism does not work and how people are suffering as a result of their dictator, as a result of their economic structure, as a result of many years in the making. And unfortunately, I think it's only going to get worse before it gets any better and we see any relief for the people of Venezuela.
Catch my full interview with our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari as we discuss some of the biggest international stories coming up after business news. A man in Northern Virginia has been charged with indecent exposure and destruction of property after allegedly rubbing his bare behind on produce at a grocery store before putting them back on display. Police say an employee noticed 27-year-old Michael Dwayne Johnson grab the items, pull down his pants, and rub the produce on his butt before putting it back. Officers say the store had to destroy several pallets of produce. You know, this is why you should always wash your fruits and vegetables before you eat them. It was a foggy day to start the day. This is how it looked on the drive to work this morning. More fog and rain is in the forecast over the next few days. I'll have all the weather details coming up shortly. We had a fog advisory earlier today. Tonight, a slight chance of rain developing with a low near 3. Tomorrow, good chance of showers developing and a high near 10. More rain is expected on Thursday with a high near 16. The rain should taper off on Friday, but it'll be mainly overcast and the temperature dropping down to 11. Saturday, showers off and on and a high of only 9. Sunday, a chance of rain mixed with flurries and a high of 8. Checking our almanac, the average high for this time of year is 20 degrees and an average low of 5. The highest temperature on this date was recorded in 1981 at 35 degrees, and the record low, -6 in 2006. Sunrise was at 7:11, sunset at 7:39. Let's have a look at national temperatures for tomorrow. Clouds and showers expected in Vancouver and a high near 16. Rain and 1 degree cooler expected in Victoria. A slight chance of showers and only a high of 9 in Calgary tomorrow. Edmonton will be mainly sunny and 12. A mixture of sun and cloud and 12 degrees as well in Regina. Saskatoon will be 1 degree cooler under a cloudy sky. Winnipeg will be overcast and 13. Increasing clouds and 22 expected in Toronto tomorrow. Sunshine and 22 in our nation's capital as well for Wednesday. Montreal will be mainly cloudy and 21. Over in the Maritimes, a good chance of rain and 16 is expected. Over in the Maritimes, a good chance of rain and 16 is expected in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Halifax, Nova Scotia will have periods of rain and should get up to 18 degrees. Charlottetown, PEI will have showers and 15. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, it'll be mainly cloudy and 10 degrees tomorrow. Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland returns to Washington later this week to continue NAFTA talks. The ongoing discussion, which Freeland describes as intensive, are being held under a September 30th deadline for getting agreement to U.S. Congress.
This is a very intensive phase of the negotiations. Ambassador Lighthizer and I have described it as a continuous negotiation. At the officials level, officials are working very, very closely. A lot of people are engaged in this effort, and we're talking a lot on the phone and by email, but there are some conversations that it's better to have face to face, and I think that it's absolutely the right thing for us to meet this week.
The resumption of high-level meetings comes with its share of criticism from the federal Conservatives. Tory House Leader Candice Bergen says her party would not have lectured the other parties on issues such as gender rights and the environment. The Trump administration will impose tariffs on $200 billion more in Chinese goods starting next week. This is in relation to a trade war between the world's two biggest economies and potentially raising consumer prices ranging from handbags to bike tires.
President Trump is announcing import taxes on another $200 billion in Chinese goods. This escalates a trade war with China, is likely to get retaliation. It's a big list of stuff. It includes everything from sardines to burglar alarms to bicycles and some types of batteries. The Chinese have said they will retaliate by hitting $60 billion in our products. The administration says that it's open to negotiations to try to resolve some of the differences. This is a fight over U.S. allegations that China isn't playing fair as it tries to become a technological power, that it's stealing U.S. technology and forcing American companies to turn over trade secrets in return for market access.
Enbridge has announced agreements to acquire Enbridge Income Fund holdings and U.S. subsidiaries. The deal is worth $4.7 billion. That is 11.3% higher than a proposal in May. The Calgary-based company says it also signed an agreement to acquire outstanding units and shares valued at $4.56 billion. Enbridge says the deals are part of its efforts to simplify its corporate structure. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, dates have now been set for Lethbridge residents to give their input on finding solutions to our city's drug crisis. A total of 4 sessions will be held October 10th and the 11th at the Sandman Signature Lethbridge Lodge. Each session will be able to accommodate up to 80 people. When you see news happening, drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of today's top stories, check out our full newscast online at bridgecitynews.ca. Tesla's Elon Musk is being sued by one of the rescuers who helped save kids from the Thailand caves earlier this year. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will explain next. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come on out to the 8th annual Word on the Street Festival taking place on Saturday, September 22nd from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Lethbridge Public Library main branch. This event will feature panel discussions, demonstrations, workshops, live music, a marketplace, and much more. For details, visit thewordonthestreet.ca/Lethbridge. The Lethbridge Symphony concert season is opening with its resident professional string quartet, Musaeus, presenting Extra A Fall in Strings on Friday, September 21st at 7:30 p.m. at Casa. Following the concert, enjoy an afterglow reception with an opportunity to interact with the performers. Tickets are $35 and available online at lethbridgesymphony.org or call 403-328-6808, extension 101. The Paw Society is having their biannual dinner and silent auction taking place Saturday, September 29th at 6 p.m. at the Westminster Hall. Come out and enjoy a delicious chili dinner with all the fixings, plus an ice cream bar. Tickets are $25 for adults, $5 for kids ages 6 to 12, and free for children under 5. Get your advance tickets at Just for Pets or reserve them by calling 403-328-6700. Donations for the silent auction are greatly appreciated. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
An Israeli-American Israel advocate was stabbed to death by a Palestinian terrorist. 45-year-old Ari Fould was found outside of a busy shopping mall. Now, joining me now to talk about it is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari. Lisa, video footage showed Fould chasing and shooting the assailant, identified as a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah. More of the same terrorism in Israel, this time at a supermarket. You have the father of 4 children, only 45 years old, and somebody who dedicated his life to telling Israel's story, to defending Israel, to being a champion of Israeli nationalism, its military, its right to exist. I actually knew Ari pretty well, and he was somebody who traveled the world, came to the United States, would do speaking engagements about Israel, loved the country so much that he moved from his home in New York to live on Israeli soil and to be that champion of Israel's rights. He touched so many lives, from Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, who spoke at his funeral and tweeted about his life and his dedication and all the wonderful commitments that he had to the state of Israel, to his family, to his community, how many lives he touched. And somebody who did so much charity work, community work for his country. He was in the Army Reserves. And to have this happen, we have random attacks, like 13-year-old girl who was stabbed in her bedroom by a Palestinian attacker who was not much older than the attacker in this case, a 17-year-old. And then you have attacks like these that are more targeted for somebody who is a champion of Israel's rights. And they consider this a victory. They're celebrating. They're calling him a martyr. You got press releases by Hamas, also by other Palestinian terror groups within Gaza, who celebrated this, who congratulated the 17-year-old for doing what he did, taking the husband, the father of 4 children away from them. Again, more of the same. I posted about this yesterday, and when you have people who actually think this was a good thing because they don't understand the intricacies, the nuances of what's going on the ground between the Palestinians and the Israelis, that they don't understand that these are innocent people. This is not a military against military war. These are hoodlums who become brainwashed, and they go after innocent people, civilians living in civilian areas. This man was food shopping, and he was carrying a gun. Which tells you, he's trained in the Israeli paratroopers unit, which is the most, if not one of the most challenging and elite sections of the Israeli military. And to think that this guy was behind him for a whole minute, that's what the video footage shows, and that he didn't realize that because he wasn't on guard. He wasn't thinking that he was going to be attacked in his neighborhood supermarket. Very, very sad story. It was a very sad day yesterday. And again, when you have people like the Prime Minister and other dignitaries commenting and attending his funeral, you know what kind of human being he was.
And very sad, and like you said, a lot of brainwashing, especially with these young Palestinian youths. Tesla's Elon Musk is being sued for defamation for falsely suggesting that a British rescuer who helped save 12 boys and their soccer coach from a Thailand cave in July was a child rapist and a pedophile. Lisa, Vernon Unsworth, who lives north of London, is seeking about $75,000. You know what? Elon Musk, the guy's a billionaire. I was thinking at least $7.5 million.
Right. I think maybe this guy, he might not be a pedophile, but he's not so good at math. I don't know. But I think maybe Elon Musk should pay that up just for upsetting the guy, because it's not too many pennies for him. There's been a lot of Elon Musk in the news lately. I had this conversation with a couple of friends over the weekend. Is it truly that Elon Musk is slipping and sliding and doing drugs and attending, interviews on drugs and eating Cheetos and whatever else he's allegedly accused of doing? Or is it perhaps that he's trying to distract the media from some other things, which mostly revolves around him falsely making claims about investors and spiking up the valuation of his company and saying that they're going to go public and they're not going to go public. We have a few Tesla fans in my family, so we had this conversation, and I think they kind of thought the same, that this is kind of trying to create some sort of distraction, and Elon Musk is smart enough not to let himself slip the way that it appears he's slipping.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, we in North America were celebrating sending our kids back to school, the most wonderful time of the year, as some parents like to say. But it was a different picture being painted in Venezuela as many classrooms lay empty, Lisa. The economic crisis has left many families unable to afford school supplies or even provide their kids with food. It seems that the OPEC nation is collapsing under low oil prices and unraveling socialist economic system, leaving millions of people struggling.
Sure. This is the reality that people have to face in Venezuela. And there's so many different headlines with different angles of that reality, because it is so difficult for us here in the West, as you said. to wrap our minds around the true, how abysmal the situation is. So you have stories and headlines about how Venezuelan pets are being abandoned. You have headlines about dumpster diving. You have headlines about the children. You have headlines about how some are even sending their children to foreign countries and staying behind themselves because they can't leave. You have headlines about them going to Brazil and Ecuador, places where they're not welcome and being, harassed in other ways, but taking that risk because they need to leave and relieve themselves economically, get themselves some sort of solution. But this story is so incredibly sad, to see the unraveling of a nation, to see how socialism does not work and how people are suffering as a result of their dictator, as a result of their economic structure, as a result of many years in the making. And unfortunately, I think it's only going to get worse before it gets any better and we can see any relief for the people of Venezuela.
Turkey's Erdogan says Turkey's calls for a ceasefire in a Syrian rebel-held region are bearing fruit after days of relative calm. But Lisa, more work needs to be done as he meets with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Sure, and it seems like the key to many of these different crises in the region are held in Russia's hands. Why doesn't Russia want to comply with the requests of the United States, the requests of the international community in creating a peaceful or at least stable situation inside Syria? And they're not. They're not cooperating with the Israelis. They're not cooperating with the Turks. They're not cooperating with anyone. And it seems like they have their own agenda. Now, as we say, the expression goes, too little, too late. We've allowed Russia that ability to monopolize and to own the Syrian crisis. So because of that, they're calling the shots. They're the ones involved on the ground. They're the ones who fooled President Obama into thinking that they would control the chemical weapons, that they would control Bashar al-Assad. But instead, we see that they're the ones holding the puppet strings. And no number of sanctions or slaps on the wrist that can now be delivered in a diplomatic way can curb Vladimir Putin and what his agenda seems to be for the region.
Lisa, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of cheating on UN sanctions on North Korea. She says Washington has evidence of wide-ranging Russian violations.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were a separate set of sanctions put on Russia just for the violation of assisting North Korea to bypass the sanctions put on by the West. So this is a serious accusation to be made by Nikki Haley, by the United States on Russia, but they must have very conclusive evidence to suggest that Russia is the complicit one helping the North Koreans. Now, this looks awful. Why? Because not only did President Trump find himself in this very pressured situation with Vladimir Putin when he came to the United States and they stood on stage and Trump misspoke and put the United States in a very, very compromised situation with regards to our foreign policy and with Russia. But North Korea, which happens to be at the moment the the accomplishments of the Trump presidency or foreign policy, to have gone over, to have had a conversation with Kim Jong-un, a dictator with which nobody could curb, and now to see this maybe falling apart at the seams because we don't have a timeline as to what will happen. Will the North Koreans denuclearize? How quickly will they do so? Will they adhere to the sanctions? We have reports day in and day out that contradict one another. Are they denuclearizing or are they building up their assets? And the Russians here are the key player. Again, just like in Syria, the Russians are the ones who are helping other countries, including Iran, to evade the United States, to kind of work around any sort of punitive measures, economic or political, and to help these players stay in the game. Now, of course, that puts the United States in a very precarious situation with regards to our foreign policy. How do we handle this? What happens when sanctions no longer work? And that's a conversation that we have to have at this point. Now, Nikki Haley is calling the Russians, they're calling them out, which I think is a smart move, but we'll see where that gets us.
Iran's atomic chief says the U.S. withdrawing from the nuclear deal is doomed to seriously affect peace and security in the Middle East. Tell me more about that.
Well, this is more of the same muscle flexing between the United States and Iran. Iran seems to think that the pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal by the United States was many things, including illegal, unsafe, creating more instability in the region. The United States seems to think we loosened the sanctions, we gave all this money to Iran, and we saw a less safe Middle East. We saw an Iran that put that money into Syria and into Hezbollah and into Yemen and into Iraq and not into its mainstream economy, and didn't make things safer at home or abroad. So, you know, we see a lot of chest thumping by the Iranian president, by their foreign minister, by many of their leaders, but the people in Iran tell us a different story. The reality on the ground tells us a different story. The United States withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal, yes, but we need international help in supporting that position. And we're not getting that from the Europeans, from the Russians, from those who are trying to help Iran stay afloat, stay relevant, and to make irrelevant the fact that the United States withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal.
Now here's an interesting story. France and Britain are at war again, but this time over scallops. Fishing along the English Channel. Lisa, it looks like fishermen may have finally reached an agreement.
You know, this is a great story because whoever thinks of these things and whoever hears of these things, you think of fishermen as the most calm people floating along the seas and catching their fish, selling them to the market, going on their business. But no, here you have a very heightened situation that has been actually going on for a long time, which is why there had been a previous arrangement made that was not to the liking of the French and the British scallop fishermen. I don't even like scallops, but apparently they're very lucrative, and apparently there's an area which is in disputed waters which has a lot of scallops. So here you have a scallop war. And again, we have a line that has been drawn and an arrangement made so that everyone can get their fair share of scallops.
When they're deep fried, I got to tell you, they're pretty tasty. And with the right sauce, it's really nice.
The price may be going up.
Yeah. Anti-globalization activists threw some black liquid soap across the front of a bank in Paris over the weekend. Now, this is one of several protests planned in both France and Germany, protesting against banking practices. And Lisa, that's a decade after the collapse of the Lehman Brothers.
Absolutely. So maybe it has a slower trickle effect into Europe, but Europe has its share of problems, economic and otherwise. What we are seeing around the globe is this new change in order, and that change in order is based on two things, the economy and national security. National security really resting upon immigration. And when you look at those two issues, that's the reason President Trump got elected here. It's the reason that Brexit was voted into in the UK. And it's the reason many, many people take to the streets all over the world. So you're seeing these kinds of protests in Iraq. You're seeing these types of protests in Romania. You're seeing these types of protests in Hungary. Now you're seeing these types of protests in Germany and in France. And much of that has to do with the economy, but more of that has to do with immigration and national security practices. Why do I say that? Because when the people in these countries see that there is this discrepancy between social services and what they are working for and what they are working towards, that discrepancy causes people to go out into the streets and to create a protest. Because otherwise, people do not sleep at night and wake up in the morning and dream about equality and democracy and justice for all. It's when they feel that pinch economically that sends them out onto the streets. And this is exactly what we are seeing. And interestingly enough, you see in Italy, you see the government putting a stop to this immigration crisis. They're not going to fall for what France and Germany fell for and now have buyer's remorse about letting in the masses and not being able to absorb them. And you see less of that problem of instability within society in that country of Italy. Italy calling upon Germany and France to also support their position. But unfortunately, I think for France and Germany, it may be a bit too late.
Lisa Daftari, our foreign affairs expert, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Thanks so much, Lisa.
My pleasure.
We all go through the loss of loved ones in our lives. We grieve those losses immensely. Now, this is a process which can be done in a very productive manner or maybe in a less healthy way. Joining me now from Yorktown, Virginia is Yvonne Ortega, a licensed professional counselor and the author of the book, Moving from Broken to Beautiful Through Grief. Welcome to Bridge City News, Yvonne.
Thank you for having me.
Now, can you give me a bit of background on your own journey that has led you to the expertise on the grieving process?
For a long time, it was strictly a clinical training and experience with clients. But in 2009, I got a firsthand dose of grief, real grief. Within 7 months, I lost 2 aunts, my mother, and my only child. And I walked around. Go ahead.
No, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's a lot to take in such a short period of time.
It was, and I walked around in shell shock for a year, and it took the anniversaries of their passing and Mother's Day in particular for me to realize I have lost my mother, my best friend, my encourager, my supporter, my cheerleader, and I've lost my only child. And I won't hear from them this Mother's Day. No cards, no calls, no gifts, no visits. And I can't send anything to my mother. I can't call her.
Wow. So where do you draw your strength from? Is it the support of other friends and family? You reach out to God to give you strength and encouragement and love? I mean, how have you been able to handle this?
Initially, when I lost my mother, I said, all right, Mom has led a full life. She was married, she had children, she got to meet the grandson, my child. And when my brother married, his wife had 2 sons, and she knew them also. And she loved all of us, and she did so many things with her life, helping other people. So I could say, all right, I can compartmentalize that one, so to speak, and I can get through that one. But my son was a different story, Hal. Initially, I was angry with God, and I said, where were you when he died? Why didn't you stop it from happening? The parents are supposed to go first, not the child. You know that, God. Why didn't you help him when he was gasping for air? And then through scripture, I had to dig into God's word. There had to be answers. And Psalm 119:16 was the answer for me. All the days ordained for you were written in my book before one of them came to be.
Wow.
And I said, okay, God, I don't understand why you didn't ordain very many days for him, but I surrender. He's yours.
Yvonne, yeah, I'm so sorry. That's amazing. Wow. And that you're able to draw that kind of strength and wisdom, from God's word to help comfort you in that time of need. And it's not just death that we grieve, but you also talk about we need to grieve other types of losses as well. Can you explain that as well, please?
For example, if a person gets a life-threatening illness, like my neighbor's husband got MS, and for months it was a downhill journey, and he died. But she had time. Not that that made it any easier, but she knew this is coming. He is in a nursing home. He has round-the-clock care. He's on oxygen. When that ventilator's on, he can't talk. And she didn't want to see him live that way, nor did he want to live that way. And they're both Christians. So he's in heaven. He doesn't need a respirator anymore.
He's been healed, right? He's been healed.
The ultimate healing.
That's
home
right.
with the Lord.
Now, I've heard that grief has a number of stages that we tend to go through. Can you maybe share some of those with me?
I shared one of them, and that is anger. Another one is fear. Lord, how am I going to survive this? What will I do without my loved ones? Or what will I do with a life-threatening illness? I'm scared. Another one is sadness. So sad that it has happened. So sad that it's out of our control. And in that process, I wish it were real clear cut and simple. Okay, I've been through anger. Check it off. I've been through fear. Check that one off. I'm marching forward. But we go back and forth. And we do that because of triggers.
Now, you also refer to regret as another one of the common emotions in the grief process. Why is that?
Regret. If only I had known. If only I had said such and such. If only I hadn't said what I did. I remember one man saying, the day my wife died, we were both in a hurry to go our separate ways to work. We didn't say, I love you. And then they passed each other on the road and waved. And that was the last time he saw his wife alive. She was in an accident.
So, Vaughn, what are some of the unhealthy methods people use to deal with their grief? I mean, I guess drugs and alcohol, maybe sex outside of marriage. I mean, is there a way we can help someone who is going through that spiral downwards? I mean, what can we do to help them?
I call that downward spiral the tsunami of self-medication, and there are many forms that it takes. And one of them could even be shopping, excessive buying. Anger's another one. I will explode at every moment that things don't go my way. One of the ways that we can help is to pray for that person. And if we have a fairly healthy relationship with that person, say, I know you're hurting. How can I help you? Or, I've been through a similar journey. I don't know exactly how you feel and how you're dealing with it, but this is what I did. And then tell them about a program like Grief Share or the Compassionate Friends. Talk to them about journaling. Sometimes people don't want to share their feelings with someone else.
But sometimes those who do, the best thing you can do is just sit there and listen. To be supportive and loving, right? Just listen.
Yes.
So people can unburden, from their heart what they've been through. They just want somebody to care and to listen, right?
Right. They want a good listening ear. This is not the time to preach to them or to jam scripture down their throat. It's not the time to give unsolicited advice. But oh, do listen.
Now, can you explain what it means to live in a new normal and how you reach this point after going through a major loss, such as the loss of a son or your mother?
The new normal is living forward without those that you've lost, or maybe without the health you once had. And it can also be the new life that you are living in a community. You may have moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, or one part of Canada to another, and you've lost your support system. You're in a different church, you're in a different neighborhood. Everything is very new. But we can make it through journaling, pouring out our heart to God. He's told us, pour out your heart to me, O people.
Now, what advice would you have for someone who doesn't seem to be able to move on with the new normal, and they seem to be really stuck in their constant grief? You hear a lot of times of elderly couples, been married for 50, 60, 70 years. One dies within a month or two, the other one dies of a broken heart. So what do you say to those people who've had such extreme loss that they just can't move on?
It isn't easy. And my own mother years ago had told me that if Daddy went first, she would be dead within the month. But what I tell people is, what would your loved one say? Would your loved one want you to be stuck in the past, forever a victim, or would your loved one want you to move forward? And you can give it a try and do it in memory and in honor of your loved one.
Yeah, they'd want you to live your life to the fullest, absolutely. And they live on in our hearts as well, those special memories. Now, you talk about wound salters. What exactly is a wound salter, Yvonne?
A wound salter is a person who feels he or she must say something to the bereaved. Sadly, the person doesn't know what to say and says the first thing that comes to mind. So sad. For example, someone told me, well, now that your son is gone, you can turn his bedroom into the office you've always wanted.
That's tough.
Ouch.
So what else should we not say? That's a major no-no. But what's another
That's
thing we
a
shouldn't say? What are some other things we shouldn't say to someone who's grieving?
I know just how you feel.
I've heard that.
No.
Yeah.
They don't know. Or another one, at least you know he's in heaven. That did not bless me. Yes, it was great for him, but not for me.
Or at least you had a chance to spend 20 years with that person. Enjoy that time you spent with them. Well, yeah, okay, thank you. Now, you talk a lot about that journal. You've mentioned that a few times during this interview.
Yes.
How does that help people to grieve, by writing things down in a journal?
I pretended I was sitting there writing to God and telling him everything that was on my mind. And then sometimes I would journal and pretend I was talking to my son or to my mother or to my aunts. And I could get it all out. It was easy to express it. There was no one there to interrupt me. There was no one there to preach to me or to tell me some of the things wound salters would. And so it was very healing.
Now, sometimes in the grieving process, forgiveness needs to be part of healing. Can you describe what that looks like, and why is forgiveness so important?
If we don't forgive, it's like we are shooting ourselves. We are bleeding inside out, and we're not dealing with it. And so what happens is that physically we can end up with ulcers, colitis, eating disorder, substance abuse problems, any of those things, because the body doesn't lie. The body says, I need to deal with this. And emotionally, we are stuck in that moment of grief and don't move forward. And spiritually, we set up a wall between us and God.
So, Yvonne, moving forward, you encourage people to make new plans, maybe a new city, maybe a new environment, get out of the house where maybe you and your husband lived for many, many years, and he passed away, and maybe sometimes a fresh beginning is good for a fresh start to help with the healing. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it is. And one of the things that I've done is around Mother's Day, I go away. I don't stay home. And honestly, I don't even go to church, because I told my Bible study group one evening before Mother's Day, now this will be the first Mother's Day. I'm going to go to church, but please don't come up to me and say Happy Mother's Day. It's not a happy one for me. Just if you want to hug me, pat me on the back, squeeze my hand, tell me you're glad to see me, that's fine. But please don't say Happy Mother's Day. So what happened? I walked inside the atrium. One of the gals who had been right there in Bible study, Happy Mother's Day, Yvonne. I turned around and left, and I said, okay, from now on, I go away. I'll go to the beach. I'll go to the mountains. I'll go to the park. Anything.
Right.
But be away.
Yvonne Ortega, a licensed professional counselor and the author of the Moving from Broken to Beautiful Through Grief book. Thank you so much for joining me on such a heavy day for you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.